Funding for this program is provided by the Riley Foundation in memory of George F. Riley.
I think history shapes who we are. It certainly makes us as a country, certainly makes us as people.
As different as we all think we are in terms of people or cultures or races or genders or ethnicities or generations, as different as we all think we may be, there's far more similarities.
You can't get out of a book in one or two paragraphs the experiences that people went through. When you come to a museum like this and you see the fuselage of a B-24, you go, holy cow, that's like beer can aluminum. They had no protection up there.
We have these amazing examples of heroes and people and, the whole country coming together. And we need to be able to tell those stories in a way that appeals to me, my children, my children's children down the way.
We think about Pearl Harbor, we think about all these other things that are in the history books. We don't think about the souls of the people and what they were thinking about at the time. And that's something that we need to remember. We did something here that was done nowhere else in the whole world. Detroit literally saved the world.
This is absolutely a must-see thing to do if you're in the Ann Arbor area for a half day or a day or a week. Absolutely, you have to go to the Yankee Air Museum.
My interest was through my father, because he was in the Navy in World War II. Grew up in Ypsilanti. My mother worked in the employment office for the bomber plant here. Dad actually worked at the bomber plant for 3 months before he got called up by the Navy. So all that history together, and geez, it would really be cool to start a little museum, tell the story of what happened here at Willow Run, and try and preserve it for future generations. It was kind of a, aha, that's a cool idea moment. I went to the Rain County Road Commission at the time, who owned Willow Run Airport. There were a couple of old beaten down hangars available to us at the time. There was one really large one, and I thought, gee, if I ask for this big fancy one, maybe they'll give me the junk one over here, which is what we wanted. Well, they gave us the big one just like that. We hadn't even been in it. So that was the start of the Yankee Air Museum. That was 1981. It just bloomed.
Our artifacts extend all the way back to World War I. It's not just military either. We are an aviation museum, so all aspects of aviation are welcome. One of the biggest artifacts, an important artifacts that we have is a section of a B-24 bomber that was built here at Willow Run. Although they were built in mass numbers, 8,685 were built here at Willow Run. There are only 4 airframes that exist in the world. That's all that's left.
Henry Ford was a pacifist, and when it was decided to have the auto companies help build airplanes, particularly bombers, Jimmy Doolittle came to Henry Ford and said, we want you to build the B-24 bomber. And by this time, the war in Europe had gained in tremendous destruction, and Ford was afraid if he didn't cooperate, they might nationalize Ford Motor Company. So he gave the go-ahead, we will build the B-24 bomber parts. His head of production, Vice President of Production, Charles Sorensen, he and Edsel Ford went out to San Diego to watch how the airplanes were being built. And they were being built like handcrafted prototypes, built outdoors, no pieces interchangeable. And at the end of the day, the owner of Consolidated said, well, what do you think? And Charles Sorensen said, I'm pretty discouraged. I don't think anything Ford build would fit anything you build. And that kind of irritated Reuben Fleet, the head of Consolidated. So he said to Art Sorensen, how would you do it? And Sorensen sketched a bomber plant that could build 1 bomber an hour on an automotive assembly line. And then went back to Consolidated in the Army the next day and said, Ford can build this B-24 at the rate of 1 per hour. Everybody's jaws dropped. And Reuben Fleet said to him, nobody can do that. Well, Sorensen's jaw tightened, and he said, we'll build complete airplanes or we'll build nothing. And the Army said, start the project, start the project, start the project.
If it wasn't for all the Rosies coming in and working in the factories and taking jobs that were never open to them before, we wouldn't have won the war. The arsenal of democracy would not have been successful. It was like a call to all those independent women who were out there who knew that they had more in them than just being in the homes and just being a silent observer in life.
It was the women who came into the workforce. They had never been in the industrial workforce up to that point in time. Certainly they were teachers and nurses and office workers, but never in the industrial workforce. And by the end of the war, there were Rosie the Riveters all over the country. But it started here at Willow Run. It was an integrated facility. We were all in it together. Didn't matter what color your skin, didn't matter whether you were a man or a woman. Everybody was in favor of helping America. We can look at women today who have made it to the top of the corporate world. Certainly they made it on their own, but we can look back and say, you're standing on the shoulders of Rosie the Riveter, these women who came into the workforce in 1941, 42, 43, paved the way for everybody else after that.
Aviation is huge. It's been huge in my family. Military has been huge in my family. I have 3 older brothers, and no one ever said, hey, Elisa, why don't you go into aviation, or why don't you go into the military? They did. No one said, hey, you, Elisa, as a girl, you can do these things. So that's why it's important for me to be here now.
Rosie's story is on everyone's mind. We're just not thinking about it the same way. I mean, women in the workforce and looking for, women to take leadership roles and to try and push that. It's obviously our history.
My first time visiting the museum years ago, I'll never forget walking into the museum and seeing one of the riveting tools that the factory workers use to rivet bolts into these planes. It's heavy, and it's at least several pounds, and that's what the women held. The women held these hour after hour, punching these bolts into the planes, and not only can women do the same job as men, they can do it better at times.
There's always something about looking at an artifact and saying, well, it was there. It was part of the conflict, that it brings it alive even more. It makes it more special. The latest exhibit that we're putting together is called Deep Landings, and it focuses on the aircraft carrier training during World War II.
The losses of Navy pilots in 1942 was so horrendous, they did not know if they could keep the aircraft carriers staffed. And they had no spare aircraft carriers to train pilots to land. So they elected to convert a couple Great Lake cruise ships to aircraft carriers.
The actual airplane that we have here is an aircraft that was training on the USS Wolverine, one of those 2 ships, lost its engine on takeoff, so lost all power, ditched into the water. The pilot swam away from the airplane, and then the boat ran over the airplane and it sunk to the bottom of Lake Michigan until the late 90s. A lot of museums take a wrecked airplane and they make it look brand new, which is perfectly fine. We wanted to preserve the aircraft and conserve it in its natural state. It was upside down in the bottom of the lake when they retrieved the airplane. We're going to display it upside down, completely unrestored, only preserved. Just this year, we finalized an agreement with Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum and Leslie Science Center to create what's called the Unity and Learning Program. The Unity and Learning Program is the Yankee Air Museum, Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum, and Leslie Science Center combining their strengths together to bring educational opportunities that didn't exist for our kids in Southeast Michigan.
Hands-On Museum, number one, they know what they're doing, and they have the people and the know-how to build exciting exhibits.
STEM is important because it's not necessarily something that schools have been concentrated on. That's not where the funding always is, but that's where the jobs are. Schools can come on a field trip, and those field trips can encompass walking around the museum, learning about all the things that they have here, and they can also take a STEM-based workshop class. What we want to do for everyone is just to kind of spark that curiosity to kind of turn on that light bulb and say, oh, I never really thought about it in that way. To be able to get this partnership with Yankee and the possibility of, continuing that partnership through their move into the new museum really just kind of opens us up to dream really big.
I wanted to be a military pilot from as soon as I found out you could do that in college, and ended up flying patrol airplanes for the Navy. My roots at Willow Run go back to my birth. My father was building B-24 bombers here when I was born, and my whole aviation career seems to be centered around Willow Run. This aviation museum is much more than a museum. You can fly in the airplane that's here. We put on a tremendous air show that brings these airplanes from World War II in Korea back to Willow Run. You can see them fly again. You can hear them fly again, and you can even feel them fly again as they go over the crowd and that vibration of the airplane comes in there. It's a unique experience.
Thunder Over Michigan is the annual air show put on by the Yankee Air Museum. We are the largest annual reoccurring full air show in Michigan. Of all the aviation museums in the United States, there's only a select number where you can actually fly in some of these vintage aircraft. And it's been a mission of the Yankee Air Museum for many, many years. Our B-25, a medium twin-engine bombardment aircraft from World War II, our C-47, a heavy transport aircraft from World War II. And for those that like the wind in their hair, we have an open cockpit biplane ride in the Waco biplane. There are in and around 10 to 11 regular flying B-17, World War II B-17 bombers flying in the world. There's only 5 that are eligible to fly riders in them, and we have one of the 5.
My dad was in the Navy. He was on the USS Bunker Hill aircraft carrier. That ship got hit with 2 kamikazes in May 11th, 1945, and they lost about 400 of their crewmen. And he told me once, I was real angry when I got out of the Navy. Well, who you're angry at, Dad? I don't know. He was just angry. He would very seldom talk about it. It was a second Bunker Hill. It wasn't an aircraft carrier, it was a Aegis missile cruiser. And I got an invitation to take him out to the rechristening of this ship in San Diego. He was 88 years old, I think, at the time. And I'd been talking to the PR guy in this ship, the new Bunker Hill, and he knew Dad was on the original Bunker Hill, and they wanted to have somebody come out and represent the old ship for the rechristening of the new ship. I was sure he would say no. He looked at me very silently for a couple seconds and said, I have to do that. Still chokes me up to talk about it now even, but that was the way he thought. That was the way all of them thought. I have to do that. I saw some of these kids come up and they started asking him a question, what it was like to be in combat. What was it like when you got hit by kamikazes? How many of your friends were killed? And I thought, oh, geez, I should have told him don't ask those questions. But he answered them. All at once, it was like a veil or something had been lifted. He answered every one of those questions, stories I had never heard before. It was just time for him to do it. And we see that with so many of the people we bring into this museum that are in that generation. Their time is coming to an end, and it's time to close that loop and tell the stories so that they're not lost.
They were going to demolish the entire plant, and it would never exist again. But a group of folks got together and said, we need to save a portion of this. And we saved the most important part, which is the rollout part, where the planes would exit.
When we talk about the Save the Bomber Plant campaign, I think it's important for everyone to understand that we saved the structure from demolition. There is an extensive amount of renovation that needs to be done to the structure. This is a 144,000 square foot structure.
We're at the point where people now believe us. And that's huge because Dennis has been working on the vision for the National Museum of Aviation and Technology at historic Willow Run for 37 years.
We could have built our own, but so many people just knocked down historical buildings. And this meant so much to America at the time. We had to save it. And it's more than just World War II history. The history includes Kaiser Frazer, 800,000 cars they built, C-119 flying boxcars, all sorts of fascinating research. All of these things just pointed to the fact that we need to save a little bit of this, not just the story. How many people actually saved the building all this happened in?
Dennis, you couldn't find a much more kinder, gentle gentleman than him. He's the kind of guy he doesn't give up. Some way he's gonna find a way, and he's gonna pull people along with him, look for partnerships that make sense, and make this a community project. And with that, I believe he'll achieve his mission.
George Riley is a great guy. Very sad when we heard of his passing. He's been a huge supporter of the museum, especially one of the aircraft that he kind of took a liking to and has funded a lot of the restorations for.
George was probably, I would say he was a salt of the earth, down to earth kind of guy. He believed in a handshake could get you a million miles. You didn't need a contract. And he certainly loved the military because he served himself. And the PBY happened to be the airplane that he flew in when he was in the Korean War, and he was a radio man on that. And so, there was a connection for him.
The name of the airplane is a PB-4Y-2. They call it the Privateer. It's a long-range patrol bomber, and it was built by the Consolidated Company in 1945. It is a derivation of a B-24. We've got a big job with the restoration crew on this one airplane. It's led by a great guy. His name's Joe Amond. He's the greatest crew chief we could have. Mr. Riley was in the area, and he saw it being worked on out at the Willow Run Airport. And he let it be known that he had a personal connection to the plane, and he would be interested in supporting the restoration effort.
He learned about electronics in the Navy, and as a radio operator, that was really how he started his career. He started a business called Clover Television. It was in Plymouth, Michigan, and in order to receive a reception on television, you needed an antenna outside. So he became basically like a master antenna installer. Eventually it was called Clover Technologies, and eventually it was sold to one of the Arbocs, which was Ameritech at that time, and which gave George the ability to help institutions like this and many other things that he'd done in his life, because he was a very giving man. He's been very involved here with the PBY project and other things here, and donor to the new museum as well, so hopefully others will follow him.
The plane will last a lot longer than the people that are working on it. It'll be there for hopefully decades to come.
We have 11 staff here at the museum currently, but we have about 250 volunteers each week. This museum would not run without the volunteers. They believe in the mission, they believe in the people, and they believe in what we're doing.
Maybe they've been fascinated by airplanes their whole life, or they've been in the military, and they want to belong to a group where they get that feeling of doing something that makes a difference, that there's a camaraderie, that we're all working towards the same thing.
The passion of these people, it's remarkable. One of our volunteers said that this is the most expensive job he's ever had, and that's because he's also one of our donors.
Everybody gives in different ways. Some people give in time, some people give in kind, some people give financially. And, George's part in his life, he could give financially. He always said, I just want to be treated like one of the guys. He didn't want the red carpet, none of that nature. Again, he was a down-to-earth person, and he just wanted to be one of the pit crew,
When this place was built, there was nothing here. It was a farm field. There was no airport, no bomber plant, nothing. It became the largest airport in the world. It was opened. 18 months to build the largest airport in the world, the largest factory under one roof. So saving the building was the purchase of it and not allowing the thing to be demolished. So we did save the building. However, you can't really say we've saved it until we've got it to the point where we can turn it over to the museum folks, say, here's the key, now you can move the museum in.
Do you see a parallel between your story and your dad's story? The Bunker Hill story, where he says, that's something I have to do, I need to go do. Do you see a parallel there?
Actually, that's a good question. I'd never thought of that, but yes, I guess I would. Everybody in life has to give something back. And who knows what it is? Everybody finds something different. Doesn't matter what it is. Well, this is, I guess, back in the 80s when I decided to give back. So yes, I guess it was exactly that. Something I had to do.
Funding for this program is provided by the Riley Foundation in memory of George F. Riley.